Okay, so we are going to do a tier ranking of Mishlei commentaries. Okay, and I want to start off by saying that we are not ranking their objective goodness. We're ranking my personal value that I get out of them, which may or may not even translate into like what I recommend for other people. Okay, but I've been learning Mishlei for 20 years, and I have my opinions on it, and so these are my opinions. Okay, just to explain how I'm going to rank these. This is not like, don't regard this as don't regard this as like letter grades based on percentages. In other words, the difference between S and A is different than between A and B and C and D and D and insufficient data. So let me just give you an overview of like what I mean by these things. So in the A tier and above are my go-to commentaries, where I will read them without exception and use them as the first commentaries I go to. Like I cannot feel like I learned a pasuk if I have not gone through those commentaries. Okay, that's in the A and the S. All right. And I'll explain the difference between them in a little while. Okay, the B tier are Mefarshim who I consistently get good ideas from, but I don't feel compelled to like go there all the time. And the reason why I don't feel compelled to go there all the time is because they don't always have ideas that I consider to be good or useful, but they do enough to the point where like if I'm not getting stuff out of my A and above tier, then I'll be like, okay, I'm going to find something in the B tier. Okay, C tier are Mefarshim. C is the least defined of the categories. It's Mefarshim who I'll go through when I want to be thorough and go through all the commentaries, and you'll see that doesn't even include all the commentaries. Okay, D tier is what I call the scraping the bottom of the barrel commentaries. Okay, there are some times when I'm not getting any making any headway in any of the psukim, and I'm like, okay, I have to pull out like obscure commentaries that I never really look at. And an insufficient data is commentaries that I either almost never use, or I have just not learned that much. Like I don't own the book, or like I don't have it here, and therefore I don't feel like I can weigh in on them. Okay, and it's probably insufficient data because like it does reflect negatively on them in terms of my personal evaluation, because it means that I tried them out for a certain time and just found reasons to not use them. But I also don't feel like I can, like D is like, I would actively recommend not learning them if someone was drawn to them. Not, I shouldn't say it, not recommend not learning them. If someone said, oh, I'm learning Mishlei with blank, and I'd be like, I would switch your default commentator. I can't say that about insufficient data ones because I just haven't had experience. Okay, and what I did is I put all the commentaries I know exist here. So we're gonna do all of them. Okay.
Did you say S?
So I did not differentiate S and A yet. Okay, and I'm gonna do that right now, which is that there is only one commentary which is in the S tier. Okay, and the reason why is not because the quality is necessarily different from the A tier. I put them in the same categories. The difference is because the S tier commentary has sorry, I should put it this way: the A tier commentaries have drawbacks, okay, and the S tier does not. All right, so I know Isaac probably knows the answer to this, but anyone know who I put in the S tier?
Oh, I was gonna ask if I could guess.
That's a very good guess. Yeah, Isaac, what do you say? Yeah, that's another very good guess. Me'iri. Okay, so the Me'iri is the only commentary I would put in. Sorry, I would put in the A tier or in the S tier. Okay, and I'll tell you why. All right. So, and I want to. I initially thought I should go over biographical information about these people, but I'm only going to go through the information that is pertinent. So, the thing that makes the Me'iri the best is. Oh, and what I'm going to do also is just to differentiate him from the people I would put in the A tier. Okay, so Mati is right that I'd put Matsudas David in the A tier, and Yaakov's right that I would put Rabbeinu Yonah in the A tier. Is there another one? Yeah, there's one more that I would put in the A tier. Yes, Sadigon. Okay, good, very good, good. So it's interesting. You see, I put the Perush of Sadigon and the Targum of Sadigon. I'm putting the Targum of Sadigon in the A tier. Okay, so let me explain why. Okay, so Meiri, actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the A tier first, so that I can contrast it with the S tier. Okay, so Mitsudas Tzion and Mitsudas David, I love because I am as you know from any of my Mishlei shiurim, I'm a strong advocate of you learn the pasuk on your own first, and then you go to the Mefarshim. Okay, and I think that's how you should learn all of Tanakh. But Mishlei lends itself to that the most, because Shlomo Melech says he wrote Mishlei for 4 groups of people, right? For the Pesi and the Na'ar, the simpleton and the youth, and then the Chacham and the Navon, the wise person and the understanding person, which means that even a youth and a Pesi who does not have a lot of learning experience can still get benefit from Mishlei. So if a person said to me like, oh, I don't feel comfortable learning Chumash on my own before I go to the Mefarshim, I would say, okay, fine, I respect that. But if a person said, oh, I don't have enough experience to learn Mishlei on my own, I'd say, but Shlomo says you do, So of all the books in Tanakh, Mishlei you can and are encouraged to learn on your own before you go to commentaries, okay? And I say before you go to commentaries because you gain more out of the learning process if you do what we do, which is to work it out as much as you can and then compare and contrast what the Mefarshim give you. So for this reason, I really like the minimalism of the Mitsudas, Tzion, and David, and Targum of Sadigon. Now, I know you guys know this, but because I don't know who's going to be watching this, I just want to clarify the difference between Mitsudas, Tzion, and David. Mitsudas, Tzion is the glossary defining terms component of the Perush, and then Mitsudas David is the commentary Perush, okay? Both of them were, so it was written by the same persons, but it was written by a father. I forgot what his name was. The name is Rav Alf Schuler, and he wrote most of it on most of Tanakh. Oh, sorry, most of Nach. And then I think he died before he completed it, and his son took over. I don't know which of the Sfarim of Nach each one, wrote. So it is one person. No, you treat it as one person, and he writes like with the clarity and conciseness of a Rishon. Okay, and that's the masterful thing is that some Pirushim that he gives are like so minimalistic, like he'll just add one word and it'll open a whole like a trove of ideas. Okay, that's why I like it, because it's minimalist and it's clear and you could almost always get good ideas out of it. If you read Art Scroll often defaults to the Mitsudas David or Mitsudas Tzion, either that or Rashi, okay, in terms of their translation. So if you just, as we've had experience with, sometimes it's hard to just translate the pasuk in Mishlei. And if you need a translation, you're always going to get a translation from the Mitsudos. So it's just a good like go-to minimalist Pirush, okay? The other advantage is he is on all of Mishlei, okay? So that's good, okay. Next is Sadigon, and remember, this is Sadigon's Arabic translation. He translated the entire Tanakh into Arabic. He also wrote long commentaries, I think, on all of Tanakh, but we don't have all of them. We do have it on Mishlei, not in the Torah Chaim for some reason. But his commentary is called, or his translation is called the Tafsir, and then Kafech, the same one who translates the Rambam and all the other Judeo-Arabic Rishonim, translates the Arabic back into Hebrew. Okay, so you can see like the subtleties. I love the Targum of Sadigon because just like Onkelos, it's the subtle moves he makes, or sometimes not so subtle, which just open up vistas of of thinking. And we've had enough experience with that to see that that's the case. The funny thing is that his Perush doesn't always bear out as good of an idea as the Targum, either because of what I said yesterday. Actually, I'm going to put the Perush in. So this is a little surprising, actually. I'm going to put the Perush in C. Okay, which again, I'm going to stress this the whole time. This is not objectively speaking. This is just in terms of like how much I gain from them. Okay, so I almost always can get stuff out of his Targum. His Perush either is inaccessible to me because he oftentimes will just make oblique references to scenarios in Tanakh. And like, if you learn the stories in Tanakh, then maybe you'll get the idea, but he doesn't spell it out, okay? Actually, I got to move him to B. I'll tell you why. The other thing is sometimes his Perushim like don't feel like they add Chidushim. Like he'll just say stuff like, this is talking about Olam Haba, And so I like feel like I can't get stuff out of it. but then sometimes he gives very, very good pirushim on Mishlei. I handed these out in case we need to make reference to them, but you don't need one unless we use it. The reason why he's in the B tier and not the A and not the C is because my entire derech of learning Mishlei is based on his Hakdama. Okay, his Hakdama to Mishlei is really where Rabbi Moskowitz got his whole approach to Mishlei, which is that Mishlei is a book of everyday decision making with the goal of maximizing pleasure and minimizing pain. Okay, and that's not what everyone holds it as. For example, Rashi holds that Mishlei is about, well, listen to Rabbi Zimmer Shiurim from last year, that it's about Torah versus heresy, and it's all allegorical. Sadigon says the Mishlei is about, he says basically like you can live a life based on seeking short-term pleasure and avoiding short-term pain, or you could do long-term, and Mishlei is about long-term. So it's literally an instruction book on how to make decisions that maximize enjoyment in life, and it's going to talk about mitzvos and olam haba also, but the emphasis is on enjoying life. And that's the whole basis of my approach to Mishlei, and that's from his Hakdama. So that's why I have these mixed feelings about Sadigon, that it's the basis of everything I do in Mishlei, but the Perush is not as accessible, but he has good ideas, and his Targum is like a critical part of my learning in Mishlei. Okay, Rabbeinu Yonah. Now, Rabbeinu Yonah is the biggest contender for S tier outside of Meiri. There are three major reasons why Rabbeinu Yonah is not in S tier. Okay, number one is the most unfortunate, is we don't have his commentary on everything. Okay, we have his commentary on chapters 1 through 3. Then it's lost from 3 until 10. Okay, there are certain isolated portions that we do have, and I think it's 3. It might be 4, it might be somewhere around there. But like the commentary starts to become fractured at that point. And then later on in Mishlei, I don't know at what point it stops, but at like around the late 20s, then we don't have much of his commentary. Okay, so I cannot put it in the S tier because it's not a full commentary on Mishlei. Okay, like many manuscripts, then like there were only a few editions, and like they're lost or whatever. I don't know. I'm not familiar with the story of the manuscripts here, but yeah, there's not that many good ones. Oh, you know what? I need to get. Oh, I should have brought my good editions here. Let me just see if there's still an edition. Give me 1 second. I really should have done this. The Feldheim.
I did that upstairs.
You have it upstairs? Yeah, if you don't mind getting it, I actually want to show it because and I'm gonna get the soggy done. Pause recording or whatever. Okay, I can't find the size of the English. Oh, it is here. Fine. Oh, pause it in deference to Jakob. That's okay. You know what the best is? All right. So the best edition of Rabbeinu Yonah is Feldheim. Okay, and the reason why this is the best is for several reasons. Number one is it's the most complete. Okay, it's based on good manuscripts, and they also differentiate between when there is a discrepancy. They'll put the old manuscript or the bad manuscript in parentheses, and then the better one in brackets. And if there are two good manuscripts, then they'll note them in the footnotes. The footnotes are also good because they reference you to other areas that are of interest. The cool thing, this also has the psukim in it with Rashi and the Metzudos, so it's very handy for learning. The cool thing is, let's say you get to a point where there is no Rabbeinu Yonah commentary. Leslie, you hear me talking about your sneezes? When I'm listening to a TTL tape from Rebbe from the 70s and I hear your sneeze, I'm like, that's Leslie, because you have a very distinct sneeze.
I just want you to know something.
Yes.
Last week, all day long, I was singing 76 trombones.
Oh, okay, there you go. It does get in your head, yeah.
But you guys, you're younger folk, really ought to see it.
Yeah, it's good.
It's an amazing study in psychology.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Really.
Yeah, it is. Okay, so
They don't make those kind of movies anymore.
yeah. Actually, they're making a new one with Hugh Jackman, but we'll see if it's as good. Anyway, so in the commentary, there's the normal font. Oh, sorry, there's the normal font, and then there's this weird square font. So the cool thing is what they do is if we don't have the Rabbeinu Yonah Mishlei commentary, they'll excerpt from his other works where he wrote about that pasuk. So they'll excerpt from Pirkei Avos, they'll excerpt from Shari Tshuva, they'll excerpt from the weird Chumash commentary that not necessarily intended for publication. So that's another reason why this is the best one. And then in the back, they have a topical index, okay, both to Psukim and Rabbeinu Yonah. So if you, let's say, want to look up the Psukim on Gaiva, so you look under Gaiva and it tells you all the Psukim where either Rabbeinu Yonah talks about it or Shlomo talks about it. So it's a great addition to have. And then in the for the Sadigon one, I know this is not Mishlei, but it looks kind of like this in Yeshiva. If you find it, it just says Mishlei. It's Kafek's thing, and the way he has it is he has the Hebrew on one side, the Arabic on the other side, and then the Arabic translation. And then at the bottom, if you see in bold, that's where all the translations of the Arabic back into Hebrew are. Okay, and he has like other references here. And Torres Chaim, for some reason, just has the Targum, but not the commentary. Okay. So Rabbeinu Yonah, I mentioned that's the one deficiency, is that it's not on the entire Mishlei. Okay, the second deficiency is he is not the easiest to read on Mishlei. Okay, and I've theorized about this before. I don't know if this is factually true. It feels like in Pirkei Avos, his commentary is like it flows in terms of writing, and it's consistent in its length and style and clarity. In Mishlei, you get these weird inconsistencies where you have these beautifully written paragraphs that explain the full pasuk, and then you have these like shorthand things that almost feel like notes, and then you have essays, okay? And also, as he goes on in Mishlei, like later in the psukim, he'll be more comfortable with just like referencing what he did earlier, and so you get less and less for psukim that are on familiar topics. So it's inconsistent in its commentary. So I don't like the inconsistency as a Mishlei learning experience. It just makes it more difficult to learn, and Hebrew is a little difficult. This next reason I'm going to censor from the recording. The virtues of Rabbeinu Yonah are excellent Perushin, okay? And not only excellent in terms of the content, but when he does choose to spell it out, it is like hearing a shiur, like he really walks you through how he learns the pasuk. And Rabbi Moskowitz used to refer to him as the psychologist of Mishlei, because a lot of his interpretations are very like cognitive behavioral, where he'll explain how like certain ways of thinking lead to certain actions, or he'll explain in detail the impact it has on your midos, based on a more like Aristotelian psychology. Just very good at going into the psychodynamics, not like Freudian psychodynamics, but like the Rishonic psychodynamics. So excellent commentary. Okay, now why are they not in the S tier? So that's where we get to the Meiri. Okay, Meiri is in the S tier because number one, he wrote on all of Mishlei. Okay, number two, he learns that Mishlei is about all perfections. Okay, and so it includes Sadigon stuff about everyday decision making, but also talks about Torah and mitzvos and like and like learning Chachma and Midos, and he'll even label it in a kind of Rabagian fashion of like he'll say with certain things, He'ara Toriis, this is a Torah lesson, or He'ara Midosiis, this is a Midos lesson, or He'ara Hamoniis, this is like a street smarts lesson,
What is a harmonious?
Hamon means like people, like literally means like the masses, but does it have a more literal meaning? I don't know. Yeah, Hamonam, yeah. So the other reason I like the Meiri is that, so it's on all of Mishlei. The other reason I like him is that he will usually give multiple interpretations of a single pasuk, and we've had this experience before. And part of the reason why he does that is he came at the end of the Rishonim. So just like the Beis HaBechira on Shas will quote other Rishonim, it's such a rare thing to get a Rishon quoting Rishonim, because they just didn't have access, or they were like, early on. Someone who I'd like for similar purposes, the Bravanel, who technically is like in the Achronic period, but I count him, he's in the Rishon club, because he like thinks like a Rishon, even though he doesn't write like one. But he also like summarizes and paraphrases other Rishonim. So it's very good. And occasionally you'll actually use the Meiri as a perush on another Rishon and be like, I have no idea what so-and-so is saying. And then he'll quote him and explain him. He also is Maimonidean, right? So in terms of his hashkafa, or some people will call him a rationalist. So that obviously I'm positively disposed towards. And so he gives good explanations in that regard. But perhaps the most unique feature is the two-tiered commentary. Okay, so every pasuk he will acknowledge is written for the with the derech nigla and the derech nister. Okay, derech nigla means the exoteric or open way, and then the esoteric or hidden or concealed way. Okay, and this is based on a pasuk in Mishlei, which is Hapuchi zahav v'maskios kesef davor dibur al ofanav, something like that, which is like golden apples encased in silver, so is a statement made in its proper way. Okay, something like that. So and this is that's a pasuk in Mishlei. It's a universal thing that people acknowledge, that there's two levels of learning Mishlei. There's learning the external meaning and then the real internal meaning. Okay, and you have some of Mepharshim who are on the extreme who will only comment on the internal meaning, and others who will only talk about the external meaning. And Meiri does both. So the style of the commentary, again, if you look at, you don't have to get a packet if you don't have one, but let's say like he'll, in 21:1, so he will have 21:2 would be a good example of that. He'll have the first paragraph is going to be the derech nigla, and then he'll say u'v'derech nister, all right, and he'll say the esoteric meaning. So what's the difference between the two? So the difference is derech nigla is about hatzlacha, about success in worldly matters. Okay, whether that be business, whether that be like sometimes mitzvos, about pleasure, and then the derech nister is usually about internal perfection, about learning chachma, about perfecting your soul, about relegating your taivas for their own sake. And sometimes he says that the derech nister and the derech nigla are one, but sometimes it's two different ideas. Okay, and then I have a whole theory about how you're supposed to learn the derech nister according to Mishlei. Sorry, according to Meiri. See, it's synonymous with Mishlei. So I wrote an article about it. I'm not going to go into it now, but it's called Meiri, Nigla, and Nister. I'll include it in the link, whatever. And I hold that one of the reasons why I gravitate towards the literal, my rule interpretation wise is you take a pasuk literally unless you're forced to take it metaphorically. And I find that it leads to a more disciplined way of learning Mishlei. And I'm not denying that there's metaphorical meaning, but here's my theory about the Meiri is that all of his Nister interpretations are based on the Nigla idea, which is you learn the Nigla to find the idea, and then you just apply the exact idea to the Nister subject matter. Okay, and I'll give you an example of this. I think I read about this example in that article. So in Eishes Chayil, which is the last parak of Mishlei, it says Darsha tzemer upishtim v'tas p'chefetz kapeha. She seeks out flax and wool, and her hands work with desire. Okay, so the nigla is it's talking about a literal woman in a household and saying like and praising her for her virtues. So what's the shot? What's the praise in the fact that she seeks out wool and linen and her hands work with desire? So we know from elsewhere in Eishes Chayil that she makes dresses and she makes and clothing for her household and she sells them. So she has a business. So the way I learn it is that, and this was based on the Meiri, if I remember correctly, is that even if it's not based on the Meiri, this is illustrating his derech, is a lot of people, when they're involved in a craft, get very, very like they get very involved in the glamorous parts of the process. So like, you talk to a girl who's into fashion design. She wants to be like designing the dresses. She doesn't want to be like looking through bins of fabric or of raw materials to get the stuff to make the dresses. That if she could buy pre-selected like raw materials, she would do that. But if you look at the master craftsmen, they care as much about the seemingly insignificant non-glamorous parts of the process as they do about the glamorous parts. And my example is the excellent documentary Jiro Dreams of Sushi, about the great sushi chef Jiro, that it goes through all the craftsmen involved in sushi, and like from the guy who grows the rice, who says, I only allow Jiro to use my rice because only he knows how to use it, like to the guy who's like picking out the tuna, every single component of it is looked at with chachma and with zeal and alacrity, because every single part of it goes into making that product. So with her, she recognizes the chachma and the necessity of quality in every step, and she's as excited about like the non-glamorous parts of the process as she is about the glamorous parts. That's the derech nigla. What's the nister about? The nister is about obtaining chachma. So what is that idea applied to Chachma? So what's the non-glamorous part of learning a sugya? The facts, right? It's collecting the facts. And we're like in a first world like fact collection thing. If you like you're learning a Rashi about plants. So like back in the old days, I don't know at what point this came. They had to actually like go out and do the research on their own and like find stuff. We just like rely on Rashi, and even that we're too lazy to do. So and then certainly like some people are too lazy to like translate and like if you really care about developing a chachma, you will pay as much attention to every step of the process because you'll realize that that's going to affect your ultimate development or your ultimate outcome of the chachma. Or let's say in the sciences, you had the people who were involved in the theorizing. Then you have the astronomers who are painstakingly charting all the stars to get the data. Or Darwin, there's some hilarious line from Darwin where like, I don't know the line, I'm going to paraphrase it, but he's like, yeah, I looked at barnacles for 10 years, like he was just like obsessing over like just charting like these things in order to like come up with this theory, So that's what I mean by the Meiri takes the ideas in the nigle, which you have to be disciplined in thinking of because you can't just like free associate to like the metaphorical thing. And then once you define the idea in the nigle, you apply it to the subject matter of the soul or of learning, and then you get like these rich, beautiful ideas. Okay, another thing the Meiri does is he will, and this is both a perk and a drawback in some cases, is he will learn psukim in clusters. So some psukim he'll give interpretations individually. Others he'll say, these 3 psukim go together, these 2 psukim go together, and he'll give an explanation for that. But he's just an all-around. If I had to take one parish on a desert island, it would be the Meiri, because he literally has everything you need, and his ideas are beautiful. His language is clear. He gives you multiple mafarshim. He gives you multiple layers of learning the psukim. He's just, chef's kiss. So that's the Meiri. And unfortunately, he's not available all over the place. He's in the Torah Chaim. He's in the Beis HaMachira in a separate volume. So this volume here. Well, actually, there's two ones. This one has Meiri on Tehillim and Mishlei. There's another one on Tehillim, Mishlei, and Avos. Okay, so it's good to know about. And then there's also a slim volume that is just published on its own. Okay, so having said that, we're gonna go. These are going to be a lot faster now. Okay, Ralbag is in category B. Okay, Ralbag also has consistently good ideas. He also is rational in his parish. He also explains mitzvos. He explains in relation to learning. Sometimes he's a little too Aristotelian, as the Ralbag is wont to do, so he'll read a lot of Aristotelian stuff into things, which is not always bad, but sometimes it gets in the way. He's also, again, I mentioned this in my Sunday share on the Ralbag, his lingo is very hard. He's very hard to translate. Okay, he has his own dialect, really, Ralbagian, Gersanadian, and so if you're not familiar with his code words, sometimes you just can't make heads or tails of his parish. But it's very good. It's very concise, and it's also on all of Mishlei. Okay.
Is that because it's like his own particular one? Or
Yeah,
is it like the society.
I think it was his own thing. It was like stylistic quirk. Yeah.
How do people even do that? How do they come up with their own lingo?
I don't know. I mean, like I feel like a lot of people do that. Like. I mean, you don't have to go to examples like Shakespeare, but Shakespeare is the classic example, like he invented a lot of his own words for his own purposes, or like, I think it's a fairly common quirk among Chachamim. Also in tier B is, Radak. Yeah, okay, Radak is in tier B. So Radak is in tier B. I love Radak. I love Radak he's my favorite parish on Tehillim. He would be my favorite parish on Chumash if he wrote on more than Breishis. Okay, but he's my favorite parish on Breishis. One of my favorite parushim. His explanations of Mishlei are very clean and they fit with the words and they're good ideas. Two problems with Radak. We only have his parish up through chapter 21. Okay, and the other problem is until very recently, he was not available except in an obscure English sefer. Okay, there's this obscure English sefer on Mishlei, and at the back they just have an all Hebrew Radak on it. And he's not in the Mikras Gedolos. He is not in Torah's Chaim, and I don't know why. He is on Al HaTorah. Okay, and so that's like the downside is like he's just not on all of Mishlei, but he gives really good pirushim, and I consistently go to him. Okay, who else? I think that's all from my B tier. Okay. Okay, now let's go to the C tier. Okay, Malbim. Now, Malbim, the perk of the Malbim is excellent ideas. Okay, excellent ideas. The downside is I cannot, in good conscience, use him. So I used to teach high school. I cannot, in good conscience, use him as a model of learning Mishlei. And the reason why is because of the Malbim's theory about Hebrew, right? Malbim holds there is no such thing as synonyms in Hebrew, and every nuance in Tanakh is essential to the idea. So for someone like the Malbim who works out ideas and who's familiar with all of Hebrew and has his theories about everything, then you get beautiful ideas that explain all the nuances. But for people like us who are learning Mishlei on our own, and someone says, well, what's the difference between a Navon and a Mavin, right? Or what's the difference between like Yosher and Yashar? You know, if you allowed yourself to get caught up on those questions, then no, well, if you could do it, if you could master everything, you would be paralyzed. You wouldn't be able to make a move. And the Malbim would chastise you and say, how can you learn if you don't have, if you don't like recognize this distinction? Now, how did he get us? By going through all of Tanakh and forming theories on all these words and by knowing grammar. So he's not so again, my whole approach to Tanakh really is, and not just Tanakh, like learning Mefarshim in general, is we are trying to be able to do what the Mefarshim do to the extent that we can. We're trying to train our minds. They learned on their own. They became Mefarshim by like learning on their own. And we're trying to get as far as we can in terms of like learning stuff with our own minds. And Malbim does not lend itself to helping you become an independent Mishlei learner. Also, to quote, I'm not going to tell the anecdote here. To quote Rav Aaron Lichtenstein's retort to Rabbi Zucker, it makes a lot of sense, but nobody does it. Okay, which is Malbim's theory that every single nuance matters makes a lot of sense, but no one does it. Okay, no one else learns Mishlei, with the possible exception of Rav Hirsch, where every single nuance is essential to the idea. So not that makes it bad. It just means that, again, it's not a good tool for learning Mishlei. But that being said, his ideas are great. He also has a Bir Hamilos and a Bir Ha'inyan, where he defines the terms and then gives you the idea. And on Al HaTorah, you get hyperlinked in the glossary part to his other Perushim, where like you can read where he gets his ideas from. So Malbim is very, very good in terms of ideas.
Wait, he gives a different nuance, that definition for each word?
Yeah.
Oh, that's super useful.
Yeah, super useful. Yeah, very, very useful.
You don't have to repeat the whole process then.
Yeah. Now, some days he'll refer you to his other places, but then you just click on the hyperlink and then you're taken there. Okay, who else is in the C tier?
Cool.
Yeah, it is. So there are a bunch of people here. Okay, so there's the real Ibn Ezra and the fake Ibn Ezra. Okay, so if you look on the in the Torah Chaim, what they will say is the way they have it here is Reish Aleph Bet Ayin, which means Rav Avram ben Ezra, Chav Taf Yud, which means Ksav Yad, which means handwritten, and then Miyuchas Rav Avraham ben Ezra, attributed to Rav Avram ben Ezra. So what's the story behind these? So the Miyuchas Rav Ibn Ezra was first printed in Mikros Gedolos under the name Ibn Ezra. Okay, it's not the Ibn Ezra. All right, and how do we know this? Because Ibn Ezra is of the Rishonim one of the foremost grammarians. Right, he has very strict shitos on grammar, and he also has a very distinctive style. He also has like a lingo, and we know from his shitos on grammar expressed here and his style. And I don't know about with his handwriting. I don't think we have actual handwritten Ibn Ezra stuff, but they know that it's not the Ibn Ezra. They think it is Rav Moshe Kimchi, who was the Radak's older brother. Okay. Now the problem is that there is a commentary on Rav Moshe written by Rav Moshe Kimchi, and apparently it doesn't line up exactly with this. Also, it's funny because like there are other Sfarim that are printed in the Mikros Gedolos under Ibn Ezra, but are really Rav Moshe Kimchi. My favorite example is on, I think, Yonah, that it's printed as Ibn Ezra, but then if you look at the Hakdama, the acrostic spells out Moshe Kimchi, you know, which is either a glorious accident or like it's actually Moshe Kimchi, you know. But the reason why I say that we're not sure is, you know, Torah Chaim is very good with critical scholarship of manuscripts, and in their Hakdama, they say we don't know if it's Moshe Kimchi. Now, why not? Because Moshe Kimchi was from the Kimchi family, And the Kimchi family was also grammarians. And the Radak, his younger brother, wrote the Sefer HaSharashim. Like he literally wrote one of the books on Sharashim. And he quotes Rav Moshe Kimchi. And that also apparently doesn't always line up with this commentary. Okay, so I don't know who it is, but it has good ideas. Okay, it has good ideas. And then there is a real Ibn Ezra commentary, which I think we know is the real Ibn Ezra. The Ksav Yad, yeah. And they're both good, but they're not consistently good enough where I feel like I have to go to them. And they're also very hard to understand in some cases. Okay, Ri Nachmias is an interesting guy. Okay, this is Rav Yosef ben Yosef Nachmias. He was a Talmud of the Rush. Talmud of the Rush. Yeah. So his commentary has original interpretations, but also is a digest of Chazal's interpretations of Mishlei. Now, those are oftentimes midrashic, but there's so much midrashic literature on Mishlei, which I haven't gotten to. So I kind of rely on him the way that people rely on Rashi to like sift out the good midrashim, and like present them. Not all of the midrashim that he quotes do we have. And he also quotes Targumim, translations that we also don't have. The pitfall of him is he doesn't cite his sources all the time. Okay, so a lot of stuff he'll say as though it's his own idea, and he's really just paraphrasing or quoting some of the Rishon that he doesn't attribute to. I look at him when I want to browse for like a bunch of commentaries. He's also, because he's a digest, he has a lot of these things in it. So he's pretty good in that regard. The Targum Ksuvim and Alter I kind of use for the same purposes. That many times they're just a translation, but they're both creative in when they choose to deviate from the normal thing. This Targum is not Onkelos. I don't know who the Targum is. I also don't think it's Yonas ben Uziel. But I like them because they're both minimalist. Alter sometimes will give his explanations in his footnote about why he does what he does. But it's what do you call? It is often just provokes like interesting streams of thought. Ibn Kaspi. So I don't understand why, but if you look on Al Torah, then there are. Ibn Kaspi is also a rationalist, also a heavy Maimonidean. So he might be in that category. Some would say more Maimonidean than Maimonides, whatever that means. There are two commentaries of his, Ibn Kaspi Pirush Rishon and Ibn Kaspi Pirush Sheni. I don't know what the difference is. Okay, it's not. Sometimes the ideas are different. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes one is longer. Sometimes the other one's longer. I don't know why he wrote two. They have good ideas, but sometimes he also just like will like. It sounds like you're bothering him, and he doesn't want to be bothered to like answer your questions. He'll be like go look elsewhere, or like you'll understand this if you're smart enough, or stuff like that. Or he has a catchphrase, Otzer Hashem Yavo, which means the treasury of Hashem will come. Which I
get it.
Yeah. So I thought used to think it means you'll get it. Apparently, he was in the habit of saying he's going to write Sfarim, and then like he had tons of plans.
Like I'll get around to it.
Yeah, and he did write a ton, but some Sfarim he didn't get around to. So I think that might be his way of saying like I'm going to write about this at some point, but like he never got around to it. The Rid. Yeah, that's funny. The Rid of Rav Yeshaya Detrani Hazakin, not to be confused with the other Rid, which is his son or grandson. I don't remember. I think this is the same as Tosfos Rid. Also good Pirushim, also very minimalist. I look at him when I can. The Torah Chaim has him, and Al Torah doesn't, but mgketer.org does. That's another good Mikros Gedolos site. I forgot to mention with the Meiri. The only place you can find him online is mgketer.org, which is a very hard site to use, like interface wise, but it has the full Meiri. So that's why I go to the site. So that's very good. The Sefer Chuka is Rav Yosef Kimchi, who is the Rav David Kimchi and Rav Moshe Kimchi's father. Okay, also very good, very concise, very clean Pirushim. And it's funny because you kind of expect with three Kimchis that you're gonna have overlap, but like you never know what you're gonna get. So sometimes I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna see what the Kimchis have to say on this, and then look at all three commentaries. Okay, in the D tier, you have Shadal, who I love Shadal, but either he didn't write on a lot of Mishlei, or we don't have him on a lot of Mishlei. I don't know what the story is, but when he has Pirushim, they're very good, but it's very sparse. Like, let's just see here. Shadal on Perek Yud, 2 psukim, on Perek Yud Aleph, 1 pasuk. Just isolated comments here, So I don't know what the deal is. And maybe on the early Prakim of Mishlei, then there's more of him. I don't know. No, so I don't know what his deal is. Again, so nothing against the Shadal. He just doesn't have on a lot of stuff. Similarly with the so here's okay. This is one I don't know where to put this. I'm going to put the Gra here. Okay, you'll hear of people saying that you got to learn the Gra on Mishlei. Okay, I just haven't had a ton of experience with him. I find that the Gra on Mishlei is of two styles. There are styles of the style that I learned Mishlei, which is Meiri, Sadia Gaon, Mitzudas David, like learning how to make decisions. And then there's also heavily, oh my goodness, this is embarrassing. Yeah. Okay, we'll talk about Rashi. Okay, Rashi belongs in the D tier for me. You can see my prejudice against Rashi on Mishlei because I've forgotten him. Okay, Rashi.
I was planning on asking that after we went through everyone.
Yeah, I totally forgot to. Can I add something? No, I can't add it now. Okay, so Rashi is one of these people who one of these days I want to learn Rashi on Mishlei. That's what Rabbi Zimmer gave shiur on last year, apparently. Okay, if you don't mind me going over like 3 minutes, just so we can finish this. Rashi learns Mishlei all allegorically, or at least that's his stated purpose. He does give shot every once in a while, but most of it's allegorical. Most of it is not explained very at length, so it's also hard to tease out. He'll say stuff like, just, you'll see a pasuk about a king and he'll just say, Zeh HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or Zeh Achashverosh, or Zeh, so it's just like, he's doing something else on Mishlei that I have not yet figured out. And he's sparse enough and not useful enough in terms of the way that I learned Mishlei with Sadigon that I just don't use Rashi very much. But one of these days I want to learn Rashi on Mishlei. And the Gra is like that. It's just the Gra wrote a lot on Mishlei. So apparently he's a very good commentary. I just have not had a ton of experience, and I'm only putting him in the D category because I said D category is the scraping the bottom of the barrel, where after I've exhausted all the other commentaries and I'm looking for people to learn, I do have a copy of the Gra and I will occasionally consult it. And he has given good, Sadigon style Pirushim before.
Can any of these guys move up or down?
Yes, yeah, and they have in my scheme. I forgot to mention, by the way, when I say the Malbim on Mishlei, I do not mean the pocket edition English Malbim on Mishlei. Stay away from that if you want to learn Malbim. Why? Because it's a paraphrase of the Malbim on Mishlei, and the Malbim would cringe because he's so exacting in his thing, and I don't know what quality of paraphrase it is, but it is not a translation; it's a paraphrasing. Now, on the bottom here, I have the Ibn Yahya, who I've only seen printed in one edition of the Mikros Gedolos. He was an early Acharon. I don't know enough about him to say how much like how useful he is. Rav Hirsch on Mishlei I've only seen in the pocket edition, and one of the cool things he does is he groups psukim by topic. But I don't know enough about Rav Hirsch and Mishlei to weigh in on it. Again, Rav Hirsch and Malbim are of the same opinion that every nuance matters, and there's no such thing as synonyms. And Rav Hirsch's ideas are very good. I just don't have sufficient data. Rav Moshe Al-Sheikh or Al-Sheikh is funny. He's not funny. It is funny that he is on the Al HaTorah, but the only reason I don't learn him is super long on every pasuk. Okay, super long, and I just have not in my Mishlei. Like, I'm so busy going through these other tiers. By the time I get to the end, I just haven't, had the time to learn him. And then the Chomas Anach, I don't know where it's found in a printed way, but on Bar Ilan, I think it's written by the Chida. And I just don't have experience, but he's also very long. So again, just to repeat, these are not objective rankings. These are in terms of my own personal experience in Mishlei. Again, if you have to learn Mishlei with only one person, it's the Meiri. You should learn Mishlei with Mitzudas David and Rabbeinu Yonah where they exist. Targum, Sadigon, I just find useful, but he's not for everyone. And then the Kimchis, Rabag, and the Parish of Sadigon are like my go-tos. And then everyone else in C is great. D would be great if we had them more often, or if we got to them. And then insufficient data, I just can't say. And I've heard good things about the Gra, but different than the way I approach it. So hopefully this is useful. And if you ever want to learn Mishlei on your own, then you can review the. I'll try to save the image, and I could send it to you if you're like, oh, what was the tier ranking? So there you go. Okay. All right. Have a good day.